The Overwatch team have claimed that Wrecking Ball has been reworked, and after playing this character for a little bit, I definitely think this is still Wrecking Ball, and I think a lot of the pain points with this character in Overwatch 2 still exist. He just has a little bit of extra flair that I'm not really a big fan of. But you know what? Let's go ahead. We're gonna get into the some of these problems and why Ball just this rework doesn't quite feel like it's not necessarily the wrong direction. It just feels directionless. So basically, Ball has a lot of the same problems and doesn't feel much different. Um, Basically, those problems are it's he has very little ways to effectively counteract CC since there isn't another tank anymore. It's all up to his movement and his options in order to outplay the CC, which directly counters him and makes his job harder. And he just still doesn't have that. His other options, this grapple, it doesn't do that. It's very slow. It If he gets stunned while he's using it, it will still cancel the ability. Not great. So there is some possibility for new tech. You can see this one right here. You fireball and then grapple, and you go super far and super high, and that's really good for him. Another concern I have is that the skill floor was lowered, but and this or not. I guess this isn't a concern, but the skill floor is lower, and the skill ceiling is technically higher. But I feel like really it's a net the skill floor has lowered. So I'll show you one thing. So you know, uh, one of the things Ball used to be able to, or he can still do, is wall bouncing. I just did it and I can't do it again. Oh my god, I'm really bad at it. But basically, he bounces up like this and he gets a slam, right? So he doesn't have to use grapple all the time to get that slam. He just needs to have a wall, and it's like a really high-tech thing that you need to do. Now you can do this. Oh, I messed it up. I guess it doesn't matter. You can just grapple up and do it. So now you don't really need to do the tech all the time, which definitely lowers the skill floor by a considerable amount, and you just get to fireball right afterwards. But the skill ceiling, like, we're still learning all the new tech, but this character still plays fundamentally the same, and now you don't need to use the tech as much. So like, I feel like the character has been dumbed down just a little, and I don't think that was the intention with these changes. In fact, I don't really know what the point of these grapple changes were. I guess just to open up new options. That was weird. I got fireball off of that. Ball's uptime is technically higher because now you can grapple and start your engage, and then you can just grapple out. Basically, you get more damage in, or just more opportunity to engage. But I don't think it's that much higher. And the biggest thing, I think, is that the shield change here on ladder, this ability feels kind of worthless. It never feels like your, what's it called? Your impact actually, like, it never feels good. You give it to other people, you take it away from yourself, and you never know if they're actually doing anything with it or if you've actually saved somebody. It doesn't feel great. So let's just go ahead. We'll go down the list. I don't want this to be too directionless, but the grapple changes, okay? There's more ways to set up before fights, right? So instead of you like having to be somewhere and then you have to grapple in or slam in, right? Now you can do some silly things. So I like to call this one the ball sack. You can hang here indefinitely until somebody stuns you or you cancel it. So there's new places to play and new places to start fights. This does not go away, again, until fireball or release or it gets stunned. So he can stay here forever. I think this eliminates a lot of risk of the initial setup, and I think that's one of the skills of Ball that was really interesting, is that, there's a lot of times where you have to set up, but you have to go in with one of your resources, and you have to play it right, But with this, it feels like you can just catch people more unsuspecting. Like, they have a lot less way to even know you're there, and then you just come in and do whatever the hell you want. It feels really annoying, but it doesn't really feel necessarily better for Ball. Like, it's good, but I feel like this is a change that didn't really need to happen. It just makes Ball more frustrating to play against. The grapple is really slow, which it's probably necessary so he's not like darting around all over the place and getting fireball. But it means that it's really hard to use mid-fight, which I think is probably when it's the most interesting. If you could just, like, you know, change your momentum really quickly and get out of the way of things, but you can't because you have to use fireball for that. Which, again, like, I feel like if they wanted to give him more potential for outplay and more movement, this is just more setup and I guess more sometimes tech with fireball like this. But otherwise, I feel like the grapple, it's not that useful, especially when you've already taken your engages. Oh, excuse me. I already talked about those techs being a little like less usable or less needed. Here, look at this one, right? Regularly what you would do is you would boop somebody off and then just stop. And that's really easy to do. It's not, you just have to know that you can do that. Otherwise you would go flying off, right? Instead now you can do this, boop them off, and then grapple right back. And I feel like that is something that's inconsequential, but it still just lowers the skill floor of this character for something that is a pretty easy thing to implement effectively in your gameplay already. I don't know, like, what's the point of that? Like, it's an easy change, and I don't know. There's a lot with this character that it questions, like, why are we doing this in the first place? So, you know, I guess it feels really good when you know when to use a tech and when not to. This, you know, just grappling up and slamming, it just doesn't feel as good. Like, there's a feel to this character that when you're able to accomplish it, like the high tech stuff, it's really satisfying and really unique, and I feel like it's been dumbed down a little bit. I want to make it clear, like, it's not really a bad change for the skill floor to be lower, but it does feel like the higher skilled things are less rewarding now, and that is what the problem is. Like, it feels like you shouldn't have to play like that anymore, and I don't think that's a great thing. I think one good thing, though, is that, like, you can, like, get fireball on, like, these high grounds like that, like, way easier to disrupt people. That's pretty good, and I think that's really useful. I think that's a good change with the grapple. But, you know, in terms of grapple, honestly, like, these are fine, even if they just wanted to implement them without any other changes. I think everybody would be like, yeah, sure, you know, like, that's a cool addition. But, you know, it doesn't really do too much other than introduce a couple new options. But yeah, the shields change. So I feel like this change is really weird. Basically, you can redistribute your shields to your allies up to like 75 HP. Think of it like, but the reason why this feels really weird for Ball is because Ball really needs his shields to take engages, right? He really, really needs shields because otherwise he takes way too much damage and he has to leave. And, you know, Ball is designed around taking damage, and that's why he has overshields, because he wants his damage to be overshields, right? Like, that's the damage he wants people to hit him with so that he can keep engaging and stay in fights longer. When he redistributes shields to allies, however, he is giving up his ability to stay in fights. And I don't know how I feel about that. Think of Queen and Malga, right? When they shout and help their allies, because they have, like, you know, they have ways to give overhealth and damage reduction, whatever they give to allies, but it also applies to them, so they get to stay in the fight. When Ball does it, he has to leave the fight. He can't really keep going anymore. And that just feels backwards to me. Like, what is the point of this? What is the point of, like, even if you use it to protect your allies, now you've given up your agency in the fight just for them to get way less of a reward than you do? Like, I feel like it just isn't great, especially in ranked. Like, I feel like you're never going to feel the effects of this. You're never going to be like, oh, I actually saved somebody. Oh, I actually enabled somebody. You know? It's because you have to go run away and pray that they do the right thing, or you have to leave the fight to go save somebody, and now you're on downtime again. Like, I just don't understand this change, you know? Maybe if it was less for allies and he got to keep more for himself, but then again, it would feel even more worthless. I guess potentially he could do adaptive shields, and if anybody's in the range, then he gets to keep shields and he gives his teammates shields, but then that may be too broken. They'd have to change the numbers a little bit. Like, I really don't know. Like, I know they wanted Ball to be able to interact with his team more, but I feel like this is counterintuitive to how Ball really wants to play. So, and of course, the one other change, which isn't really work territory, but mines are 60 health instead of 50 health. Come on, really? I hate mines. I think mines are a terrible, like, they're just a really frustrating ult. They're really uninteractive to use. They're uninteractive to play against. They're really annoying. Just giving them more health, it's just like, I don't want to deal with that. Like, now certain things aren't going to be able to one-shot them, and it's just going to feel worse to play against mines, and I think mines is already stupid. Like, you can put mines down, die, and then, like, come back to the fight, and mines will still be there. Like, I think his ult needs a super rework, along with some other things to his kit. So basically, at the end of the day, what did this accomplish? It made Ball a little better at the things he already did, and I mean like a little better. It lowered his skill floor a little bit, which isn't that bad of an issue on paper, and it didn't do anything to fix problems with CC. It didn't give him any outplay potential for the things that really make Ball frustrating. And I've played a lot of Ball this patch, just, you know, trying to play to feel him out, and it made me remember why I hate playing Wrecking Ball in Overwatch 2, because it is a nightmare, especially this patch when healing is lower, trying to keep all of your health resource, trying to not play around CC. And if you're doing well, the enemy team will keep swapping into more CC so that, like, even if you are using the little counterplay you have to it, they will just keep stacking it over and over to make you, to make your, like, play really worthless. And, you know, obviously, that's just a problem with tank in general, but I think it affects Wrecking Ball disproportionately because every other tank has some sort of counterplay. You know, even Doomfist, you know, he can eat the nade and block it, and, you know, block keeps him in the fight. So if he blocks at the right time, then, you know, the CC doesn't really matter as much, or, you know, he's got super high burst mobility, so he can get out of things, and he's not as big as Wrecking Ball either, so it's easier to avoid. You know, Ball just is eaten up by this stuff, and he has no way to really effectively get around it, and I think that's why Ball is so frustrating. So, I have a couple spitball ideas, you know. What if Grapple was able to be pulled to very quickly, but instead it's on, like, a cooldown, so you could still get Fireball, like, you grapple and you pull, but this is, like, instant, and you get Fireball out of it, and then you can't do it all the time, so then you can't hang places, but also you have, like, more agency in the middle of fights and, you know, ways to get around the map. Also, I was thinking, like, what if you could grapple and do this pull while you're slamming? So then, or, like, while you're using cooldown. So basically, you go for a slam and then they think you're committing, and then Break tries to whip shot you, but actually you pull yourself further away and you dodge it. That gives you more burst mobility to shut down CC. And then it still makes Ball hard, and it still gives Ball a lot of, like, really interesting outplay potential that doesn't make him broken, I don't think. It just makes him be able to fight back. Yeah, I don't know. These are... And they should be ways to, like, outplay, but not necessarily mitigate CC. You know, I don't want him to be, like, CC immune for any kind of time, right? I want him to be able to use his mobility. In fact, I would shrink Ball. I think at this point, he needs some help. He needs to be smaller, because he takes too much damage. Obviously, that can be really hard to deal with, but, like, just a little smaller, I think, would go a long way and not make him too broken. And naturally, it'll be easier to play around CC if he's smaller, and also all the damage that he's forced to get because of the DPS passive not being able to heal as much anymore. So basically, at the end of the day, a lot of these changes just feel kind of worthless and directionless to me. I don't think they're outright bad. They just kind of confuse me about what they want to do with this character. Like, what is the niche that this character does? Like, how do they think this character can fit into Overwatch 2? Giving him more movement options, the character that has arguably the most movement options in the game, doesn't feel like the right idea if it doesn't have some sort of reason behind it. Like, why did they give him this? And I feel like we don't really know that, to be sure. So, yeah, I do think things need to be tweaked, but they need to change his game plan a little bit. You know, this rework is similar to the Hog rework, where his game plan didn't really change, and that isn't really a good thing. Like, we want Ball to be a little different and have some more options while keeping him this hard character to play, and this high mobility, high skill character. I think Wrecking Ball can work in Overwatch 2, and in fact, I remember that when Overwatch 2 was announced, we thought Ball would be unstoppable. Like, we thought Ball would be the easiest, or like, not the easiest, but like the best tank to use. And that ended up not being the case because of how the game played. And I think Blizzard didn't kind of thought the same thing as us, and as Overwatch 2 has developed, that just, you know, Ball potentially being a monster has become Ball potentially being the worst tank in the game. You know, maybe not always, but he definitely puts a really good case for himself. So basically, I'm not really a fan of these Ball changes, but I'd love to hear what you guys think about them. If you think they're good, if they're bad, if you think there's other things we could do to change him, if you think that Ball should be deleted. I'm sure many people do. But yeah, this was streamed live at twitch.tv/Lane Hemingway if you wanted to join in with the discussion live. I do a lot of discussions when I'm live. Mostly on Saturdays is when I do the most of them. But yeah, if you want to check out my socials, if you want to do all that good YouTube, like, comment, subscribe stuff, I'd really appreciate it. It helps me out a lot. I hope you have a good day, and thank you for watching.